Up first, we have Corey Kahaney's How I Got My Apartment.
I have a pre-war 2-bedroom apartment on the Upper West Side for under $1,500 a month. And we're not talking the bullshit Upper West Side, we're talking the creme de la creme, all right? If the Beacon Theater is sold out, good luck trying to find a parking spot in my neighborhood. Now, if you're from out of town, this means nothing. Probably doesn't even sound that amazing. But if you are a New Yorker, you are all seething right now. I'm looking at a whole room full of haters, all right? But what if I told you that I got my apartment purely through the power of creative visualization? Wait. What if I told you that you could have anything that you want purely through the power of creative visualization? Yeah. And it doesn't even need to be that creative. I once envisioned a pashmina, I got it in a week. And not the knockoff, not the kind that the Africans sell with the purses, a real one, a cashmere, a peach-colored cashmere. It needs dry cleaning because it has coffee stains. I once envisioned a car. I needed a car. When I was starting out as a comedian, you may not know this, but when you're starting out as a comedian, there are 2 types of comics. There are bad comics and bad comics with a car. Which one do you think gets more stage time? Yes. So I needed $6,000 for a car, and that became my mantra. $6,000, $6 grand, $6 grand. Every time I went to the mailbox, I opened it expecting to find a check for $6 grand. I looked in discarded bags in the gutter, thinking maybe somebody left $6 grand. It could have happened. You know, maybe someone, put it on the roof and then drove away. Oops, forgot the $6 grand. And I kept going with this nonsense for 2 months, and then my grandmother died. Ooh, but she left me a passbook savings account with $6,600. Now, what you could say, coincidence. Sure, possibly. But I kid you not, that 1989 Acura Legend with title, plates, insurance, registration cost me a little bit under $6,600. And that car saw some shit, all right? That car saw a lot of firehouses, a lot of nights at Columbus Halls. I drove headliners. I drove one headliner who was so heavy, he broke the struts on my car. And this is just for the comics, but that was the last time I ever drove Al Martin to a comedy gig. Now, I know some of you are saying, we know this, Corey. We watched Oprah. We saw we read The Secret. We've been to California. But do you know it? Do you really know it? By show of hands, how many people are completely satisfied with where their career is right now? Show of hands. Who is completely satisfied? One person. All right. All right. So then, do me a favor. Do me a favor. Just remember that your career is the one that you can focus this the most on. I'll give you an example. Years ago, a long time ago, 19 years ago, I had an audition for Letterman. Letterman, for me, was the brass ring. I wanted Letterman so badly. I wanted it more than life. And, no other TV credit mattered as much. And I did them all. I mean, you guys know about the big ones, but I did every show. I did stand-up, sit down. I did Comedy Box, Comedy Corner, Comedy Shelf. I did Get Drunk and Laugh. I did White Boys in the Hood, all right? I did every show. And the only thing that mattered was Letterman. So I showed up for this audition for Letterman, and it was a completely bullshit Letterman audition. And these things happen in comedy sometimes. I don't know if you know this, comedy's not always the most ethical of businesses. And this happens, so they call it a Letterman showcase, but really no one from Letterman is there. Or if someone from Letterman is there, it's like an intern, and it's a low-level intern. Maybe it's Biff's intern. And it was, I prepared, so it was very disappointing. And the very next night, I was driving to a gig with Jim Gaffigan. He had been on the audition with me. And we were doing Iona College, and I turned to Jim and I said, well, that was a clusterfuck they had us on last night. And Jim said, and I'll never forget this, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do the show because I'm funny. And I was floored by this. How did he know? I mean, I knew I was funny, but I had doubts. Jim Gaffigan's vision was so pure, was so airtight. He did the show within a year. It took me 14 years. Now, you might be saying, oh, Jim Gaffigan's funnier. Okay, I'll go with you on that, sure. But do you know how many other incredibly funny people have never done Letterman? Do you know? Jack Benny never did Letterman. Toady Fields never did Letterman. Sophie Tucker never did Letterman. Moms Mabley never did Letterman. Keaton, Chaplin, Burl never did Letterman. Martin Luther King never did Letterman. Gandhi never did Letterman. Mother Teresa, and I heard she was hilarious with the lepers, never did Letterman. And if you ask them, they will tell you it was doubt and fear. The apartment didn't take me that long. Fortunately, it was about a 2-year commitment. And I think it came easier for me because I had a visceral connection to the apartment. I had been in the apartment. I had looked out the window. I had touched the doorknobs. I had peed in the toilets. I felt so confident that I was going to get that apartment that I enrolled my daughter in the school 2 blocks away. And you could do that then. You could just give an address. Nobody gave a shit. Now, not so easy. So I understand visualization is not new, right? But neither are wheels and mousetraps, and we keep reinventing them, all right? And here's what you need to remember. Visualization is not like riding a bike, all right? It is a skill. It is a discipline that you need to hone and you need to master. And I am a master. So if you already know all about creative visualization, then let this be a refresher course. And if you've never heard of this before, get ready to have your world rocked, all right? Do me a favor, everybody close their eyes, all right? I want you to picture a lover, an old lover, an ex-boyfriend, an ex-girlfriend, someone with whom you might have unfinished business with. And I want you, with your eyes closed, to look down at your feet, and you're going to see sand. And you realize that you're on the beach, and it's a beautiful little crescent beach, and the sun is glittering off of the water, and it's so peaceful. And when you're ready, I want you to turn around, and I want you to see the bluffs. They're right behind you. There's seagrass, and there's someone coming down over the bluffs towards you. And it's that person. And I want you to see them come closer and closer, and I want you to see them at a time when their face made you happy. And I want you to open your arms, and I want you to embrace them and hold them and feel them. Were they angular? Were they tall? Were they short? Were they curvy? Really feel them. And when you're ready, drop your arms, and the two of you are going to take a walk. You're going to spend a little time together. And you're going to walk down the beach, and at the end of the beach, there's a little canoe. And you're going to walk over to the canoe, and this person is going to get in the canoe, and I want you to bend down and push the canoe gently out into the water. Just a little gently. The waves are going to do most of the work, and the waves are picking up, and it's taking it further and further out into the water. And you're just keeping your eyes on the canoe and the sun and the water. And now I'm going to set the canoe on fire. And it's a powder keg. It's almost as though someone doused it with kerosene. And you're going to watch it burn. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. In 1991, I was a divorced single mom living in a very bad neighborhood. And my mother and my stepfather sublet me their apartment. They were by now living in their weekend house full time. The rent was $640, and my mother offered it to me for $1,500 a month. Their rationale was if they were going to sublet this to a stranger, that is what they would charge them, and wasn't it nice that they were giving me first dibs? Of course, I wasn't a stranger. I was their daughter, raising their granddaughter, and I didn't really see it as a privilege to pay them 2.5 times the rent. But I thought, they can't live forever. And I know for some of you, 1991 means nothing. It may be a blur. Some of you weren't even born yet. But in 1991, $1,500 was a lot of money, all right? In 1991, we had three things. We had shampoo, conditioner, and mousse. And you could buy all three for $10, all right? $1,500 was hard for me. I was a single mom. I got no child support. Making that rent every month was really, really tough. But I guess some of you are stuck on the mother thing. My mother subletting the apartment for that much. All right, I'll address that. So my mother and I had a very unique relationship. There had been a bitter custody battle, my real father and my mother, and my mother really never forgave me for wanting to go live with my father. And what's even more sad is, in my mother's mind, this all happened just yesterday. You know, I did not invite you here for the rich white girl version of Precious, all right? But even I hate it when people just vaguely allude to their abuse. Because then the whole time you're thinking, wait a second, was there penetration or did the uncle just dance a little too close at the wedding? And so in the interest of full disclosure, I will simply say my mother had been a battered child who grew up to be a child batterer. Okay, are we good? Everybody okay now? Oh, you have more questions, I can see. Did I grow up to be a child batterer? No, I did not. I was not the mother of the year, but 2 decades of therapy and thousands of 12-step meetings, and the cycle ended with me. I can proudly say I have never seen terror in my daughter's eyes. On the contrary, the pendulum swang the other way, and she scares the shit out of me. So every month, I had to take this check for $640 down to the real estate office that was in the lobby of our building and pay the rent to the landlord. And then I would have to take my check to my mother's bank and put it in her account. And it started to get harder and harder for me. Yeah, it really did. Every month it got a little harder. You know, little things started to sink in. You know, if it was a subletter, they would probably eventually find out what the real rent is. They always do. They always do. And even a stranger doesn't like to be ripped off. Yeah, and when you think about it, a stranger would be way more likely to throw them under the bus than I would. Yeah, and they were genius, my parents, my stepfather and my mother. This was win-win for them. And I realized I wasn't the victim here, I was the chump. So you're probably thinking, oh, visualization's not working for her right now. Not at all. Not at all. Every time you visualize something, you learn something new. I did not know then that when you visualize, you have a choice. I visualized getting the apartment. I did not visualize getting the apartment easily and effortlessly. Write that down, by the way. Always add easily and effortlessly. I used to think easily and effortlessly you save for holding the subway an extra second, or not getting a ticket when you come back and the meter's expired, or zipping up an absurdly tight pair of jeans. That's what I thought you saved it for. But there is no law that says your vision has to almost kill you to manifest. And when I lost my job and my unemployment wasn't even enough to cover the rent, I thought I was getting closer to my vision. I was not. Sometimes things were so bad, I would take my daughter to eat dinner at Macy's because it was the only credit card that I still had room left. I know that sounds like really first world problems that I had to feed my child at Macy's. Finally, I had no choice. I had to tell my mother I couldn't pay. So I went to her house, and she lives about a half a mile down the road from Rosie O'Donnell, Al Pacino, and Bill Murray. 4 bedrooms overlooking the Hudson River. Nothing fancy. And you know, they told me they needed my money to get by. They told me they needed my money to make ends meet. And I didn't begrudge them a nice lifestyle. I didn't, but on my dime. And so I waited until my stepfather went up to watch the football game, and I'm sitting with my mother on this beautiful screened-in porch that overlooked the Tappan Zee Bridge. And I said to my mother, I said, Mom, I can't make the rent. You know, I'm a cater waiter, all right? I can't afford it. And my mother thought about it for a second, and she said, if you can't afford the rent, then you should move to Queens. And I went, and I stood at the edge of this porch, and I was watching the cars coming across the Tappan Zee Bridge. And it was dusk, and all the headlights were coming on. And it dawned on me that all those people coming home over the bridge to Rockland County were always going to be a little pissed off that they couldn't afford Westchester. And their bitterness mixed with my bitterness, and I said, fuck Queens. And the next day I went to see a lawyer. So I go to see this lawyer, and I show him all the receipts. I show him all the deposit slips. I show him everything. And he's like, I've been doing landlord tenants for a long time. This is your mother, your real mother. Not this is a new one for me. Well, just off the top, it's only legal to sublet for 10% over the rent. And by law, as the subletter, you can sue them for 3 times the amount of the profit. And I said, well, I'm not going to sue my mother. And if I sue my mother, we're both going to lose the apartment. He says, yeah, but with the 30 grand, you can buy a place in Queens. Why does everybody want me to move to Queens? And I get up to leave, and he goes, wait, hang on. There is one thing you could try. And there's, by the way, whenever a lawyer says there's one thing you could try, that's what you try. So he says, let me ask you, did they like you? I said, what do you mean? Yeah, they like me. He goes, did they know that you live there? I said, yeah, they see me. They know I send my daughter to Hebrew school. They think I'm a nice Jewish girl. He says, if you can get them to take your rent 2 times, then they will have recognized you as the tenant. Huh? If you can get them to cash your personal check for the rent, you don't have to pay your mother anymore. And I went home and I was like, oh, like I have the balls to do that. I don't know if you know this, but back in those days, not the highest self-esteem. You know what I mean? I wasn't working with a lot of confidence. And I go home and I get the mail and I take the mail upstairs and I put the mail on the counter. And on top of the mail is my stepfather's 401k. And I'm buttering some toast, a little low-fat spread. Yeah, we didn't know margarine was bad for you back then. And I'm buttering and I see that, keep looking at that 401k statement, and you're not going to believe this, ladies and gentlemen, but my butter knife flew out of my hand and ripped open that 401k statement. And I opened it up, $629,000 in the 401k. I'm sorry, but if you're hurting, if you're just trying to get by with $629,000, you got problems. And I snapped. I went to my purse. I got my checkbook. I wrote out a check. Put it in one of my mother's stupid envelopes from like juvenile diabetes that she donated to one time. And I went downstairs to the real estate office and I handed it to the building manager. He was such a sweet guy. His name was Yanni. And I just handed it to him like normal. And I walked out of there, and 10 minutes later, I was on the floor in utter terror that I was going to lose my apartment. What did I do? Oh my God, what did I do? And then I got this call.
Hello, daughter. It's your mother. As I mentioned to you the other night, Stuart and I will be out of the country, so I'm sending you 2 checks in case we aren't back in time. You know the drill. All right. She's my granddaughter, and you know we would help you if we could. And we never know what the future may bring. Only Allah knows. Love you.
It's going exactly as I planned. All right, so she did mention Allah, and I think I should probably address that. I did not know all this shit was going to go down when I agreed to do the show. Just my mother is a Muslim, and no, she was not born a Muslim. She was a Jew that converted to Islam, and I can't explain it. Nothing I say will make any sense to you. She married another Jew who converted to Islam. I mean, the best I can figure out is she converted to Islam because she just didn't feel Judaism was demeaning enough to women. That's the best I can come up with. Sometimes I'll tell people that, and they're like, you should do that in your act. That's funny. I'm like, no, it's not funny. You're never going to see My Mother the Muslim coming this fall to NBC. It's never going to happen. All right, let's just table the Muslim issue for a second, because the good news is my first check cleared. My first check cleared. I am halfway home. I am so happy, which, by the way, teachable moment, folks. All right, so sometimes when you are getting close to your vision, you hit a wall, right? And you keep trying to go that same route, and nothing happens. And this is when you need to try a different approach. right? When I was, by the way, I had to audition for Letterman 9 more times till I got it. And I can't blame the Letterman people. I can't. I mean, those auditions were abysmal. I ate cock. I sucked ass. We're talking 3rd trimester abortions. These were not good auditions. And then I realized, and the reason why is because I wanted it too much. And please pay attention, you can't want it too much, because then the stink of desperation seeps off of you. Why do you think the horny guy at the bar never goes home with anyone? And so when I started to just visualize, and I would do it in yoga, I would do it in Warrior 2. I know if there's yoga people, you're going to say I'm not aligned properly. But Warrior 2 is the best way, because you're so focused on your alignment, on your posture, that you can truly see it. And I saw Dave there, and I saw Paul there, and I saw the audience there, and I saw everybody who ever supported me back there, or I should say everyone who ever booked me back there. And I was just seeing it. And when you just see it, there is no stink of desperation. And I did this for a long time, and then finally it hit me. Schmuck, I sat down at my computer, and I made a tape of all 6 of my late shows with Craig Ferguson. And I went to the one person I knew at Letterman, and I said, here's me killing on a show that comes on right after yours on your network that you own. Do you think maybe you could watch this and we could do a set together? And in October of 2010, I did Letterman. Now, a good question would be, was it worth it? 14 years. It was pretty cool. Yeah, it was worth it. It was totally worth it. So I'm very happy. I think it's all coming together. And I come off the elevator, and there's Yanni, and he's waiting for me in the lobby. He's like, okay, Corey, listen, I took your check. He was Israeli. They were all Israeli. I took your check, but you know, the lease is in your mother's name. I can't, I can't take funny business, Corey. I can't. Don't get me in trouble, Corey. And I was like, oh shit, what am I gonna do? I have to somehow come up with the 2.5 times the rent that my mother needed. I already paid the rent to the landlords. I was going to have to sell everything I owned. The good news was I had a little time because my mother was in Mecca. Because where do good Muslims go on vacation? They go to Mecca, folks. Yeah. Let's talk about a trip to Mecca, shall we? Yeah. You can't use miles to go to Mecca. You don't stay at a Hampton Inn if you're going to Mecca. You don't eat at Denny's if you're going to Mecca, right? You fly commercial, full price, you stay at a Ritz-Carlton, you hire a driver, all right? If you are hurting, if you are just trying to get by, you go to Niagara Falls on vacation. Eyeballing what this trip cost was probably the same amount of money they had made off of me in the 2 years they were subletting. So I'm packing up stuff, I'm taking it to the flea market to sell. And I come downstairs with my TV table, and I see Yanni getting in a cab with luggage. And I'm like, huh. And I go to the real estate office, and it's a room full of horny Israeli guys. That's really redundant. I should have just said it's a room full of Israeli guys. And I'm like, hey, where's Yanni going? And they're like, oh, he's going to Israel. And I said, oh, for how long? Yeah, a month. A month. Who's taking the rent? You can leave it with anyone. And I'm like, hey, so who wants a TV table? You see, this is very important. You have to always stay the course. You never know how the universe is conspiring to help manifest your vision. You don't know what's coming down the road. Speaking of road, let's pull down the map, shall we? So, my mother, the Muslim, is in Mecca. Yanni, the Jew, is in Israel, all right? This is way back, folks. There was no internet. My mother wasn't checking her balance, all right? And there was no free long distance. Yanni wasn't calling the office. Mecca and Israel, you just know this is all going to end peacefully. So now I had to plan every move meticulously. I had to turn into Kaiser Soze. And I couldn't pay the rent too early, otherwise they would suspect something. I waited until 4 o'clock on a Friday because I figured they would make a bank run before Shabbos. I put on a short skirt. I went into the office. I went and I talked to the horniest Israeli guy. And I made small talk. Uri, why don't you have a boyfriend? I don't know. You're the Jewish, you should have a boyfriend. And I'm like, here's my check. And he's like, oh, give it to Shmuel. He's going to the bank. Oh, hello, Shmuel. Yeah. And in my head, I'm thinking, Shabbat Shalom, bitches. That's what I'm thinking. So now it was out of my hands. Now it was all up to God, or Adonai, or Allah. Who knows? Who fucking knows? And I prayed all weekend. I prayed. Shema Israel Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Bismillah Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, wisdom, know the difference. Nam Yehodim Yikah, Nam Yehodim Yikah, Nam Yehodim Yikah. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. I don't know the whole thing. That one's so complicated. Now, some of you probably, this is a good question. How different is prayer to visualization? Entirely different. It's a whole other department. And some people say he doesn't even come in the office anymore, all right? And if there is a God, he's got way bigger fish to fry than me, all right? And my screenplay. He's got other things to do. But I will say this, it never hurts to pray. I made it till Monday. 6 o'clock. And I got to use this new thing that we had. It's called Bank by Phone. We thought that was high tech then. We really did. And I had to punch in the numbers. And this is what I heard.
Press 1 to hear your balance. Press 2 for checks paid. A check in the amount of $640.11 was debited from your account today, October 28th. Please make a note of it.
Could you do that again?
Press 1 to hear your balance. Press 2 for checks paid. A check in the amount of $640.11 was debited from your account today, October 28th. Please make a note of it.
Do you understand what happened? I just won. I beat the system. I am free! I am free until everybody comes back from the Holy Land. I am free! And apparently they're not coming back any more holy than when they left. It was a shitstorm. I don't even want to go there. It was poor Yanni. I felt so bad. He had to go to the landlord. He had to tell the landlord. Landlord was so scary. He called me down to the office, and I had to sit in front of the landlord. I had to show him all the deposit slips. I had to show him all the canceled checks. And this, you know, the landlord was like, "Your mother did this. Your mother did this. Your mother did this." I never heard this. And then he called right in front of me. He called my stepfather, and he was like. No, it's not your apartment. It's my apartment. I own the building. No, I'm not throwing a single mother on the street with a child. No, she lives here. You don't live here. You haven't lived here for 4 years. All right? You should be ashamed of yourself, what you did. And he hung up the phone. And right then and there, he gave me a rent-stabilized lease in my name. Exactly how I envisioned it. Well, not exactly. Not exactly. By the way, it's never exact, which is why this is the most important one to remember. Be specific, all right? Be specific. You don't realize it takes just as much energy to visualize a house on the ocean as it does a rent-stabilized apartment. That apartment was my Moby Dick, to be sure. I mean, it took laser beam focus, but it only has one bathroom. All right, let's wrap it up. Let's review. So, if you believe it, you can have it, right? Doubt and fear is the enemy. Easily and effortlessly. There's no law that says this has to kill you. What do you call it? Stay the course. Always stay the course. Be specific. Never envision anything that is dry clean only. And there is one more. This is the last one. This is more of a cautionary tale. Be prepared for what comes after. All right? This is important. You know, I did not know how I would feel after it was over. I did not know how guilty and ashamed I would feel for stealing my mother's apartment. You know the expression, he would sell his mother for 2 nickels? I sold my mother for 2 bedrooms. And I wasn't comfortable with that. Even with Letterman, I was blindsided. After I did Letterman, they called me for another set. And I was like, what? No, I didn't envision this. This wasn't on my vision board. I can't handle that. And I stalled. I stalled and I stalled and I was paralyzed. And then when I was finally ready, the booker got fired. And the new people were like, meh. So this is, be prepared for what comes after. In program, they say, don't quit before the miracle. I'm going to add an addendum. Have your shit together for after the miracle comes. It was my husband who finally freed me from this torment. You know, but I didn't get my husband through visualization. But I will tell you, when you have a 2-bedroom apartment for under $1,500 a month, a lot of options open up. So he's a lawyer, and I said, is there a loophole? Is there some kind of, precedent that could exonerate me? And he said, no, you stole your mother's apartment. He said, but it's not. I'm like, what? It's like someone raped you and they left their wallet on the night table and you kept the wallet. Did you keep the wallet? You kept the wallet. Is anybody going to give a shit? And I felt better after that. So if you use any of these techniques or all of these techniques, your life is going to change. I know for me, it's changed over and over again. And when I first discovered this power, I was 12 years old. And when I was 12 years old, it was 1974. And in 1974, fathers were not getting custody of their children, not sole custody, even under the best circumstances. But my father lived in Europe. He wasn't married, and he traveled for work. Even his lawyer told him he didn't have a shot in hell of getting sole custody of 2 little girls. But I saw it. I saw it so clearly. I saw it over and over again. I saw that judge signing the paper. I wasn't even in the room. And I saw him sign the paper. And I saw us packing. And I saw us going to the airport and getting on a plane to a life without beatings. So the first time I discovered it, it saved my life. I will say this. I couldn't tell you this story until now because I didn't want to betray Yanni and the landlord. You see, I don't know if you know this, but landlords in New York City are not the most benevolent people. And my landlord was on the top 10 list of worst landlords in New York City. And I didn't want to ruin his reputation. I didn't know if he wanted people to know he had a heart. But he sold the building this summer, and I don't think he would mind. And then last month, in October, I signed a new lease, and of course they raised the rent. And what's really kind of interesting is when I signed the new lease, I looked at the new rent, and my rent is now $1 less than what my mother was charging me 24 years ago. And as you can imagine, I don't talk to my mother very much. But if you asked me, was it worth losing my mother for this apartment? Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Give it up for Corey Kahaney. Up next we have Molly Diggins, who will sit tight while you set up.